Emily had worked at Maple and Steam Cafe for almost 2 years, and in all that time, she had never once come to work without giving her best. She believed that if someone trusted her with a job, then she owed them honest effort and a kind attitude. She wasn't the kind of person who raised her voice or argued with customers. Even when someone was rude, she reminded herself that staying calm always won in the long run. But on the day everything changed, her calm nature was tested more than ever. It was a busy afternoon, the kind where every table was full and customers lined up near the door. Emily moved from table to table, balancing plates and refilling drinks without losing her smile. Her feet hurt, but she was used to that. What mattered most to her was that people left happy. Just as she finished serving a family at the corner table, her coworker whispered, "He's back again." Emily didn't understand at first, but when she turned toward the entrance, she saw a familiar man walking in. He wasn't like the usual customers. His confident posture, quiet expression, and the way people stepped aside without him asking. It all hinted that he lived in a very different world. Daniel Hartley, a billionaire whose name often appeared in business news and social media. Emily had served him twice before, and he had always been polite, even surprisingly humble. But today he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a woman wearing a designer dress, high heels that clicked loudly on the floor, and sunglasses even though they were inside. Her expression looked like someone who never heard the word no. Emily immediately felt a small knot in her stomach. Difficult customers often carried that same look. The cafe manager rushed forward to greet them, almost tripping over his own words. "Welcome back, sir. Right this way, please." He led them to one of the best tables. The woman sat down heavily, crossed her arms, and sighed loudly, as if simply being in the cafe offended her. Emily took her notepad and approached the table with a gentle smile. "Good afternoon. What can I get for you today?" Daniel smiled politely. "Hello again. I'll have the usual latte." Before Emily could write it down, the woman cut in. "Is this really the only place you could bring me? Look at these chairs. They look cheap." Her voice was sharp enough to make a few customers turn their heads. Emily kept her smile steady. "I can bring cushions if you'd like. And please take your time choosing your order." The woman stared at her as if she had said something offensive. "Do you think I need cushions? Are you trying to hint something about me?" Her tone rose. Emily shook her head. "Not at all. I just want you to be comfortable." But that didn't help. The woman leaned closer to Daniel. "Why is she talking so much? Isn't a waitress supposed to just write down the order?" She whispered loudly enough for Emily to hear. Emily lowered her eyes respectfully, trying not to look bothered. She had seen all types of people, some kind, some stressed, some just having a bad day. She reminded herself not to take things personally. Daniel looked embarrassed. "Please don't be harsh. She's just doing her job." But his girlfriend rolled her eyes. Emily waited patiently. After a moment, the woman finally ordered something simple, though she found a way to complain about every ingredient. Emily wrote it all down without missing a detail. When she brought their drinks, the woman tapped her spoon against the cup dramatically. "This coffee is too bitter. Did you even make it properly?" Emily kept her voice soft. "I'm sorry if it isn't to your preference. I can make another one." "You should have made it right the first time," the woman snapped. Daniel looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. "It tastes fine to me," he said quietly. The woman glared at him. "That's because you drink anything. I don't." She turned her anger back to Emily. "Do you know who he is? He doesn't deserve poor service." Emily nodded gently. "Of course. I'll fix your drink right away." She took the cup, made another coffee, and brought it back. This time, the woman didn't even bother tasting it. She simply said, "Take it away. I don't want it anymore." Emily blinked. "Would you like something else instead? Are you deaf?" "I said I don't want it." Daniel leaned forward. "Please don't speak to her like that." But the damage was done. The woman suddenly narrowed her eyes at Emily, as if seeing her for the first time. "Actually, wait. Are you trying to flirt with him? Is that why you keep smiling and talking?" Emily froze. "No, not at all. I'm just doing my job." The woman laughed bitterly. Sure you are. I've seen your type. You act innocent, but you're trying to get attention. Well, I'm not stupid. She looked around the cafe, raising her voice. Someone like you shouldn't be working here. A few customers exchanged confused looks. Emily felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she refused to speak back. She couldn't lose her professionalism. The woman called loudly for the manager. He rushed over immediately. Is everything okay? Fire her, the woman demanded, pointing a finger straight at Emily. Right now. She's disrespectful and unprofessional. Emily's heart dropped. The manager looked at Daniel, hoping he would step in, but Daniel only looked torn. He didn't agree with what was happening, but he also didn't want to create a public scene. The woman crossed her arms. If she isn't fired, we're leaving. And trust me, I will never let him come here again. Her tone sounded like a threat that carried weight. The manager swallowed hard. Maple and Steam Cafe had been struggling to stay open. Losing a customer like Daniel could hurt them badly. He turned to Emily with regret in his eyes. I'm really sorry, but I think it's best if you take the rest of the week off. Actually, we won't need you to come back. Emily felt her throat tighten. You're firing me? He lowered his gaze. I'm truly sorry. Daniel stood up, clearly angry now. This isn't necessary. She didn't do anything wrong. But his girlfriend grabbed his arm. Let's go. I'm not staying a second longer. She tugged him toward the exit. Daniel hesitated for a moment, looking at Emily with guilt in his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered before leaving. Emily watched them walk out. She held her breath, forcing herself not to cry in front of everyone. Her coworker placed a hand on her shoulder. I know this is unfair. You didn't deserve that. But there was nothing anyone could do. Emily went to the back room, collected her small bag, and signed the exit papers the manager handed her. When she stepped outside, the cool air hit her face, and that was when her tears finally fell. She walked slowly down the street, replaying everything in her mind. She kept thinking, did I say something wrong? Was I too polite? Was I too quiet? But deep down, she knew the truth. Nothing she did could have satisfied someone who came looking for a fight. By the time she reached the bus stop, her hands trembled. She thought of her small apartment, her younger brother who depended on her income, and the bills due next week. Her heart felt heavy. She whispered to herself, I'll find another job. I have to. I can't give up. But at that moment, she didn't know that losing this job was actually the beginning of something she never imagined. Everything would change again the very next day, only this time not because of someone who wanted to break her, but because of someone who finally saw her worth. The next morning, Emily woke up earlier than usual, even though she had barely slept. Her mind kept replaying everything from the cafe. The raised voice, the false accusations, the moment the manager told her she was fired. The memory felt heavy, as if it was pressing down on her chest every time she breathed. But she forced herself to get up because she didn't have time to sit and feel broken. She had responsibilities. She quietly stepped into the small living room where her younger brother was still sleeping on the couch. He always insisted he didn't mind sharing the space, but Emily wished she could give him more than this tiny apartment. She looked at him for a moment, thinking about his school fees, the groceries they needed, and the bills due by the end of the week. She whispered to herself, I have to stay strong. After making a simple breakfast, she left a note for her brother and stepped outside. She had seen a flyer about a job fair happening nearby, and even though she felt nervous, she knew she had to try. She wasn't someone who easily gave up. The walk to the event center took nearly 20 minutes. The weather was warm, and the sidewalks were busy with people rushing to work. Emily hugged her small bag closer, telling herself that today might turn into a fresh start. She didn't know how, but she wanted to believe it. When she arrived, the place was crowded. Tables were set up everywhere, each representing a different company. People dressed in formal clothes moved around confidently, while others sat nervously with their resumes. Emily felt a bit out of place in her simple outfit, but she took a deep breath and walked in anyway. As she was scanning the room, someone nearby said, Ladies and gentlemen, our guest speaker will be here shortly. Please gather near the main stage if you want to listen. Emily wasn't particularly interested at first. She had come here to find job openings, not listen to speeches. But when the crowd shifted, she found herself walking toward the stage anyway. She stood near the back, hoping not to be noticed. When the speaker walked out, a wave of surprise rushed through her. It was the same man from the cafe, the billionaire Daniel Hartley. Emily blinked hard, almost thinking she was imagining it. Of all places, why would he be here? Why on the very next day after everything happened? She stayed completely still, unsure whether to hide or walk away. But before she could move, Daniel began speaking. He talked about hard work, about people who rise from small beginnings, about believing in yourself even when others doubt you. Emily felt his words settle deeply in her chest. She didn't know if he meant them generally, or if he was indirectly referring to what had happened, but she listened carefully. After his speech ended, people lined up to talk to him. Emily didn't plan to join them. She just wanted to slip away quietly. But fate had a different plan. As she turned to leave, someone bumped into her, making her drop her bag. Papers spilled everywhere. She quickly dropped to her knees to gather them, hoping nobody had noticed. But a familiar voice spoke. "Are you all right?" She froze for a moment, then slowly looked up. Daniel was standing right in front of her. Emily felt her face warm with embarrassment. "I'm fine. Sorry. I didn't mean to get in the way." He didn't look annoyed. In fact, he looked concerned. He knelt down to help her pick up the papers. "I remember you from yesterday. I wanted to speak with you." Her heart skipped a beat. You remember me?" "Of course I do," he said softly. "I'm truly sorry for what happened at the cafe. You didn't deserve that." Emily didn't know what to say. She gently shook her head. "It's all right. It wasn't your fault." "Maybe not directly," he replied. "But I should have stopped it. You were just doing your job, and you handled everything respectfully. I regret not speaking up sooner." Emily could see he meant it, and the sincerity in his voice surprised her. She had expected powerful people to brush off situations like hers, but he looked genuinely troubled. They both stood up, and Daniel asked, "Did you come here looking for a job?" Emily nodded. "I lost mine yesterday, so yes, I'm trying my best to find something quickly." She hoped her voice didn't sound as tired as she felt. "What are your skills?" he asked, not in a robotic or businesslike way, but as someone who truly wanted to know. Emily hesitated for a moment. Most people only saw her as a waitress, but she had more to offer. "I studied hospitality management. I couldn't afford to finish my higher degree, but I've always been passionate about small businesses. Cafes, restaurants, places where people feel at home. I actually have a lot of ideas I hope to use one day. Maybe open a small cafe of my own." Daniel's eyebrows lifted slightly. "That sounds ambitious. Do you have any of your ideas written down?" Emily nodded again. "Yes, but they're rough notes. Nothing special." "I'd like to see them," he said gently, "if you're comfortable sharing." Emily slowly opened her bag and pulled out a small notebook. The cover was worn, the pages filled with sketches, lists, menu ideas, and notes she had been collecting for years. She handed it to him, feeling strangely nervous. Daniel flipped through it, and she watched his expression shift from curiosity to surprise. He took his time reading as if every detail mattered. Emily stood quietly, her hands clasped together, waiting for him to say something. Finally, he looked at her. "These ideas are incredible. You have a talent for understanding people's needs and creating welcoming spaces. You think not just like a worker, but like a leader." Emily felt her breath catch. "Thank you," she whispered, "but I'm not sure how much it's worth. I mean, it's just ideas on paper." "That's where every great business starts," he said kindly. "With an idea." Daniel stepped aside with her, away from the crowd. "Would you be open to having coffee with me?" "Not in a formal way. I want to talk to you more about your ideas." Emily blinked. She wasn't sure how to respond. It wasn't a date, his tone didn't feel like that. Felt more like he genuinely valued her thoughts. I guess that would be all right," she said cautiously. "Good," he replied with a relieved smile. Let's go to a quiet place nearby. I want to understand your vision fully. Emily followed him out of the event center. They went to a small cafe just a block away, very different from the upscale places he probably usually visited. But he didn't seem bothered. They sat at a corner table, and Emily felt slightly nervous again. Tell me about the kind of cafe you dream of, Daniel said. Emily took a slow breath. I want a space where people feel safe. Somewhere simple, warm, not too expensive. A place where quality matters more than luxury. I want to serve homemade pastries, fresh coffee, things prepared with care. And I want to create jobs for people who deserve chances, just like I once needed. Daniel listened with full attention, not interrupting once. His eyes reflected interest, real interest. You know, he finally said, I've been planning a new project, a chain of community-focused cafes that bring people together. Something meaningful, not just another business for profit. But I've been struggling to find the right person to help lead it. He paused before adding, You think exactly the way I've been searching for. Emily looked stunned. Me? But I'm just. Not just anything, he said firmly. You understand people. You understand service. And you have ideas with heart. That's rare. For a moment, Emily didn't speak. She wasn't used to someone important taking her seriously. She felt the weight of yesterday's pain slowly lifting. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Would you consider working with me for a short trial period? A week or so. I want to see how your ideas translate in real life. Not as a waitress, but as someone with a leadership role. Emily's hands shook a little. She wasn't sure if she was dreaming. I don't want charity. I want to earn it. Good, he said with a small smile. Because I'm not offering charity. I'm offering opportunity. The rest depends on you. Emily nodded slowly, feeling a mix of hope and fear. Then yes, I'm willing to try. Daniel smiled warmly. Great. Then tomorrow morning, meet me at the downtown branch of Hartley Foods. We'll begin there. As they finished their drinks and walked outside, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. She didn't know exactly where this opportunity would lead, but she finally felt like someone saw her worth. And she didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of her life changing forever. Emily woke up the next morning feeling both nervous and excited. She had barely slept, but this time it wasn't because of stress. It was because her mind kept repeating yesterday's conversation with Daniel. She still couldn't believe he wanted her to come to the downtown branch of his company. The idea felt unreal, almost like a dream she might wake up from. But the note she had written on a scrap of paper, Hartley Foods, 9 a.m., reminded her it was real. She got ready carefully, choosing the neatest clothes she owned. They were simple and far from business style, but she made sure they were clean and presentable. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she whispered, Just be brave. You deserve this chance. She left a message for her younger brother, letting him know she had a possible job opportunity. She didn't want to raise his hopes too high, but a small part of her hoped he would be proud. The ride to the downtown building took nearly an hour. When she stepped out, she felt tiny in front of the tall glass structure. Its entrance looked like something from a business magazine. Sleek, modern, and way too fancy for someone like her. For a moment, she wanted to turn around and walk home, but she remembered Daniel's words, I'm not offering charity. I'm offering opportunity. That sentence gave her strength. She took a deep breath and walked inside. The lobby was huge, and people in suits hurried around with purpose. Emily clutched her small bag tightly, hoping she didn't look completely lost. A receptionist greeted her kindly. Good morning. Do you have an appointment? Emily nodded. Yes, I'm here to meet with. She paused. Saying his name felt strange, as if she was pretending to belong here. With Daniel Hartley. The receptionist's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she didn't question it. Of course. Please wait here. She made a quick call, and within a minute, someone arrived to guide Emily upstairs. She was led through bright hallways, past meeting rooms and offices. Finally, they reached a wide-open area filled with workers sorting files, reviewing plans and checking schedules. It looked like the center of operations. and standing near a desk, reviewing a folder, was Daniel. When he noticed her, he closed the folder and offered a friendly smile. "You made it. I'm glad." His tone was warm, and something about it made Emily relax just a little. "Thank you for giving me this chance," she said softly. "You earned it," he replied. "Come. There's someone I want you to meet." He introduced her to the team running the Pilot Cafe project. They looked surprised at first. Emily knew she didn't look like someone who belonged in a corporate environment, but Daniel explained that she would be assisting for the week. She noticed how the team's attitude softened after hearing his confidence in her. Soon, he handed her a clipboard filled with notes. "I want you to look around the Pilot Cafe we're currently testing. Observe everything: the menu, the layout, the service flow. Write down what you think could improve." Emily blinked. "You trust me with that?" "If I didn't, I wouldn't have asked you," he said simply. They drove to the Pilot Cafe together. It was located in a crowded area with lots of foot traffic. From the outside, it looked nice, but as soon as Emily stepped inside, she noticed little things that felt off. The display counter was too cluttered, the menu had too many complicated options, and the staff seemed unsure about their responsibilities. Daniel stayed back, letting her observe on her own. Emily took notes quietly, moving through the space with slow steps. She watched how customers behaved, where they paused, where they hesitated, what confused them. She noticed how long the staff took to respond and how the ordering line formed awkwardly near the entrance. When they sat down, Daniel asked gently, "What do you think?" Emily hesitated before answering. "There's a lot of potential, but it feels like the cafe is trying to look fancy instead of inviting. People want comfort, not confusion. The menu needs to be simpler. The counter should be reorganized so people know where to stand. And maybe you could add a small shelf for quick grab-and-go items, drinks, sandwiches, baked goods. It would reduce the line during busy hours." She paused, worried she might have said too much. "Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it well." Daniel shook his head. "No, that was clear and thoughtful. It's exactly the kind of insight I hoped you'd bring." Emily felt her cheeks warm with a mix of pride and disbelief. "Let's test some of your ideas today," Daniel suggested. He called the staff together and explained Emily's observations. At first, some employees looked unsure about taking directions from someone who wasn't part of the company. But the moment they tried her suggestions, things started working better. Emily helped reorganize the counter area, moving items around to create smoother flow. She suggested switching 2 menu categories, making things easier to read. She even helped show staff how to greet customers in a warmer, more personal way. Within hours, the cafe looked and felt different. Customers who walked in seemed less confused and more comfortable. Even the staff members admitted that the new setup made their work easier. Daniel watched all of this from a corner. Every time Emily looked up, she noticed he had a thoughtful expression, almost amazed. Later, while they sat reviewing her notes, he said, "You have a natural instinct for this. Not everyone sees what you see." Emily lowered her gaze shyly. "I just like places that feel welcoming. I think everyone does." "True," he said, "but not everyone knows how to create that feeling." They spent the rest of the day working on improvements. Emily didn't even realize how many hours had passed until she noticed it was already evening. She felt tired but strangely fulfilled. Before they left, Daniel walked her to the entrance. "You did really well today. Better than I expected, honestly." Emily laughed softly. "I was scared I would mess everything up." "You didn't. You were thoughtful, observant, and confident in your own way." He paused. "I know it's only the first day of your trial, but you've already made a difference." Emily looked at him, seeing sincerity in his eyes. "Thank you. I'm grateful you gave me a chance after what happened." He nodded. What happened was unfair, but sometimes unfair moments lead to the right ones. As she walked toward the bus stop, Emily felt something new blooming in her chest. Hope. The kind of hope that made her steps lighter. When she reached home, her brother rushed to her. "How was it? Did everything go okay?" Emily smiled, a real smile this time. "It went better than okay. I think this could lead somewhere." She didn't say too much, not wanting to sound overly confident, but her heart felt warm. That night, as she lay in bed, she replayed the day in her mind. Not the stress or the fear, but the moments where she felt valued, seen, heard. She drifted to sleep with a small smile, not knowing that the days ahead would test her, surprise her, and change her life more than she imagined. Because this was only the beginning of her rise, and Daniel had only just begun to see what she was truly capable of. The next morning felt strangely calm for her, even though her life had changed completely in just a few days. She woke up earlier than usual, made a cup of tea, and sat by her small window. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid of what the day would bring. She felt nervous, yes, but also hopeful. The feeling was new, and she held on to it tightly. She kept thinking about the meeting she had with him the previous evening. The way he had spoken to her, not as a waitress or someone below him, but as someone whose ideas mattered. He listened carefully, asked questions, and took notes as if her experience on the diner floor held real value. She had never felt that kind of respect from anyone with power, much less someone like him. She spent that entire night thinking about what she could bring to the business. She didn't want to show up empty-handed. So she made a simple plan. Nothing big, nothing fancy, just enough to show she cared. When she reached the office lobby later that afternoon, she felt the weight of the moment settle in her chest. The building looked even taller now, like it was reminding her that she was stepping into a world she had never belonged to. But she took a deep breath and walked through the glass doors. The receptionist looked up immediately, recognizing her from the day before. "Good afternoon. You can go right up." "He's expecting you," she said with a warm smile. She nodded and stepped into the elevator. Her hands shook slightly, and she pressed them against her bag to hide it. The elevator's quiet hum only made her more aware of how fast her heart was beating. When she reached the top floor, he was already waiting near the meeting room. He gave her a small smile, one that made her feel less tense. "Glad you're here. Did you get some rest?" he asked. She nodded. "A little. I was thinking about what you said yesterday." "Good. Because today we're starting fresh." She followed him inside the room. The long table, the large windows, the city stretching far below. Everything felt unreal. But she reminded herself to breathe and focus. He gestured for her to sit. Then he sat beside her, not across the table. Already that small detail made her feel more at ease. "So," he began, "you said you had some ideas you wanted to share." She opened her notebook. "They're simple," she said quickly, "but they're based on what customers say every day. I thought maybe that could help." He leaned slightly closer. "Simple is good. Simple is honest. Go ahead." She flipped to a page filled with small notes and sketches. "Most of the diners in our area are old-fashioned," she said softly. "People love the food, but they want warmth. They want a feeling. They want a place that feels like home, not just a place to eat." He nodded slowly. "So what are you thinking?" "A modern diner," she said, "but with heart. Something clean and simple, but still comforting. Good food doesn't need to be expensive. It just needs to be made with care. And people love when the staff remembers them, what they like, how they take their coffee, things like that." He listened closely, his expression thoughtful. "You're talking about connection," he said. "Yes," she replied. "People remember how a place makes them feel, not just what they ate." He tapped his finger lightly on the table. "I like this. I like it a lot. What else?" She showed him a few sketches of warm colors, cozy booth designs, and small details she thought would matter. "This is good," he said. "Really good. You've thought this through." She felt a small wave of relief wash over her. She had been terrified he might think her ideas were childish or unimportant. But he didn't. He valued every word. Before she continued, the door suddenly opened. His girlfriend stepped inside. The air in the room changed immediately. She walked in confidently as if she owned the place, the same attitude she had the day she fired her at the diner. Except now, the roles were completely reversed. She looked at the two of them sitting side by side. Then her eyes narrowed. "Really?" she said sharply. "This is what you're doing today?" He didn't stand. He didn't look concerned. Instead, his voice remained calm. "I'm in a meeting." "With her?" his girlfriend snapped. The waitress kept her head lowered, not wanting to get involved. But she couldn't ignore the tension in the room. He finally stood, but he spoke in a firm, steady voice. "Yes, with her. She's my new partner on a business project. And I expect you to respect that." His girlfriend let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Partner?" she repeated. "She's a waitress." "You're joking." He didn't waver. "She has ideas I believe in. And she's here because of her work, not her background." She glared at the waitress, her voice dripping with the same disrespect she showed at the diner. "This is unbelievable. First she ruins my day, now she's taking my place in your meetings? What's next? You going to let her run the company?" He took a slow breath. "This isn't about status. It's about value. And she's bringing something real." She crossed her arms, her anger rising. "So I'm just supposed to accept this? You putting her above me?" His voice dropped to a tone the waitress hadn't heard before. "This isn't a competition. But since you're asking, you can't talk to people the way you did yesterday. Not to my staff, not to strangers, and definitely not to someone working with me." His girlfriend stared at him as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. The silence stretched. Then she spoke in a quiet, bitter tone. "Wow, you're really choosing her side." He didn't answer. She turned around sharply and left the room, slamming the door behind her. The waitress felt her stomach twist. She hadn't meant for any of this. She didn't want to come between them. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't want to cause problems." He shook his head. "You didn't cause anything. People show who they are when they're challenged." He sat back down, trying to regain the calm that had been in the room before the interruption. "Let's continue," he said gently. She nodded, though her hands trembled a little. They resumed the conversation, but the air felt heavier. She tried to focus on the ideas, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she had stepped somewhere she didn't belong. Near the end of the meeting, he looked at her again. "You're doing well," he said softly. "Don't doubt yourself." His reassurance helped, but only slightly. When the meeting was over, she stood to leave. But he stopped her. "Wait," he said. "There's something I need to tell you." She looked at him, unsure of what was coming. He took a steady breath. "Tomorrow, we make our partnership public." Her heart almost stopped. Public? People would know. People would judge. People would talk. She wasn't ready. He saw the panic in her eyes and softened his tone. "I know it's a lot, but I want you beside me when we take the first step. You earned this." She swallowed hard. "I'm scared," she admitted. "That means it matters," he replied. She walked out of the office with her thoughts spinning in every direction. Tomorrow the world would see her differently, but she didn't know if she was ready, or if everything would come crashing down because of it. She just hoped she could survive the change, and she had no idea what storm was waiting for her next. The next day arrived faster than she expected. She barely slept through the night, and every time she closed her eyes, she kept picturing the same scene. Cameras flashing, people staring, and her standing awkwardly, unsure of what to say or how to act. She had never been part of anything public before. Her entire life had been quiet, small, and unnoticed. Now, suddenly, she was about to step into a world she had never imagined. She got ready slowly, choosing the simplest clothes she had. She didn't own anything fancy, nothing close to what people in his circle wore every day. She brushed her hair, tied it neatly, and told herself that being clean and presentable was enough. It had to be. As she walked toward the tall office building once again, her heart felt heavier than before. Not because she doubted him, but because she doubted herself. What if she wasn't enough? What if people laughed? What if the world saw her as a joke? A waitress trying to act like a business partner. But she kept walking, one step at a time. When she entered the lobby, the receptionist smiled warmly again. "Good morning. You can go right up. He's waiting for you." She nodded, trying to calm the shaking in her hands. The elevator ride felt longer than usual, even though it took only a few seconds. The quiet hum made her more aware of her own breathing. When the doors opened, he was standing there, waiting. He looked calm, but she could tell from the slight tension in his shoulders that he was preparing for a big day too. "You made it," he said softly. "Yeah, I'm here." "You look nervous," he added gently. "I am nervous." He gave a small reassuring smile. "Good. That means you care. And it also means you're ready." She wasn't sure about the last part, but hearing him say it made her feel slightly braver. They walked into the meeting room together. Unlike yesterday, this time several people were inside. Assistants, managers, and a few board members. They all looked professional, confident, and used to moments like this. She, however, felt like she was stepping into someone else's world. As soon as she entered, the room fell quiet. Their eyes traveled from him to her, then back to him as if silently asking for an explanation. He cleared his throat. "Everyone," he began, "I'd like to introduce someone important. She's joining as my partner on a new project we're launching together." The room reacted with surprise, not rude, but definitely curious. He continued, "Her experience, her understanding of customers, and her insight into how working people think are exactly what we need. I trust her, and I want you all to do the same." She stood still, unsure where to look. But his voice stayed steady, and it grounded her. After the short introduction, he gestured for her to sit beside him. The rest of the meeting moved quickly, discussions about budgets, designs, schedules, and responsibilities. Every time someone asked for input, he turned to her warmly, giving her space to speak. She was nervous at first, her voice slightly shaky. But as the minutes passed, something changed. The more she spoke about the diner experience, the customers she'd met over the years, and the simple things people valued, the more confident she became. Some of the board members started nodding. Others took notes. They were listening. For the first time in her life, people in suits, people with power, people who normally never noticed someone like her, were listening. When the meeting ended, one of the older managers approached her. "You spoke well," he said kindly. "Different perspective. Something we actually need." His words felt like a gift she didn't expect. The room slowly emptied. She finally let out the breath she'd been holding. He turned to her. "You did great." "I tried," she said, still shaky. "You didn't just try. You delivered." Before she could respond, the meeting room door flew open. His girlfriend entered. Again. But this time she wasn't angry. She looked furious. Her lips were pressed tightly, her expression sharp. "So this is what you're doing?" she snapped. "Introducing her as your partner? To everyone." A cold silence spread in the room. He straightened slightly. "I told you yesterday. This is professional. She earned this place." "Oh, please," his girlfriend shot back. "She's a waitress. You're humiliating yourself." He didn't raise his voice, but his tone was firm. "You're the only one trying to humiliate someone. Stop." She turned her glare toward the waitress. "You really think you belong here?" The waitress didn't know what to say. She didn't want to fight, didn't want trouble, but she couldn't stay silent forever. "I'm just doing my job," she said softly. His girlfriend scoffed. "Job? You? Working with him? This is laughable." He stepped forward. "Enough." The room fell still. He continued. "I've let a lot of things go, but not this. You don't get to disrespect people because of their background. Not in my company, not in my life." His girlfriend stared at him, stunned. "So you're choosing her?" she whispered. He took a slow breath. "I'm choosing respect. Something you keep ignoring." Her eyes filled with frustration. She shook her head, turned sharply, and walked out without another word. The silence she left behind felt heavy. The waitress looked down. "I didn't want this to happen." He softened his expression. It was going to happen sooner or later. She was used to being above everyone. Today just showed the truth. She didn't respond, but she felt the weight of everything that had happened. He looked at her gently. "Let's take a break. You've done enough for today." They walked to his office, where he poured her a glass of water. She sat quietly, calming her nerves. "You handled yourself well," he said. "Maybe," she mumbled. But everything is happening so fast. It scares me. I know, he replied. But sometimes life moves forward before we feel ready. That doesn't mean we can't grow into it. She looked at him, really looked at him, and realized he wasn't just offering her a job or a partnership. He was offering belief, something she had never been given. Hours later, after they wrapped up the last tasks for the day, she stepped outside the building. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft colors. She breathed deeply. A week ago, she was cleaning tables and worrying about tips. Now she was helping shape a business. She didn't know where the journey would take her. She didn't know if she would succeed or stumble. But she knew one thing. She wasn't going back to the life of silence and fear. For the first time, she walked forward with purpose. And this time, she wasn't walking alone.